We do have one hearing. And again, a reminder, no meeting tomorrow or Friday. And then Monday, we will have more hearings on some bills. And then we will do final action, or we will work, in a sense, all the bills we've heard this week and first part of next, then on Tuesday. And then we do have confirmation from Dr. Tonser. He will be here on Wednesday, make a presentation and have your questions. So any questions you might have on beef demand over the last year, what has or hasn't happened, the difference between, the cash price and boxed beef, those type of things, or anything you would have, he can talk on a number of topics. So if you do have your questions, bring those. If there's something specific that you're wanting, let me know. He said if he had it by Monday at noon, maybe some numbers that anybody might be wanting, he would do his best to have that in a presentation or have that answer. If not, he will be available for a lot of questions after his presentation. So keep that in mind. Okay, so with that, we will have open the hearing on House Bill 2392. That is related to lifetime hunting, fishing, and fur harvesting licenses, providing Kansas Air and Army National Guard veterans a lifetime license. So with that, we will go to Kyle Hamilton, the Revisor's Office, for an explanation of the bill. Kyle?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 2392 would require the Secretary of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism to issue free of charge a lifetime combination fishing, hunting, and fur harvester license to any Kansas resident who submits to the Secretary satisfactory proof that such resident is a Kansas Air or Army National Guard veteran who served for at least 20 years and was honorably discharged. Subsections E and F of the bill, it's current law, but it does now attach to the new language that has been inserted. So I'm going to go through that pretty quickly. Under subsection E, upon request of the Secretary for Children and Families, the Secretary of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism shall not issue a lifetime license to any applicant who A, owes arrearages under a support order in a Title 4D case being administered by the Secretary for Children and Families, B, has an outstanding warrant or subpoena directed to the applicant in a Title 4D case being administered by the Secretary for Children and Families, C, owes arrearages under a support order as reported to the Secretary for Children and Families by the court trustee, or D, has failed after appropriate notice to comply with a subpoena directed to the individual by a court trustee as reported to the Secretary for Children and Families by the court trustee. So it's all dealing with child support, owing child support. And such license may be issued once the Secretary for Children and Families or the court trustee has given a release to the Secretary of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism. And then similarly, under subsection F, the Secretary for Children and Families may request that the Secretary of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism suspend a current lifetime license if the licensee owes arrearages under a child support order or has an outstanding warrant or subpoena as stated in subsection E1. And then another thing I wanted to touch on really fast is under section 119 of 2020's budget bill, and that's Senate Bill 66 from the special session, monies were appropriated for fiscal year 2021 for the Secretary of Wildlife and Parks to issue without charge annual hunting and fishing licenses to Kansas National Guard members for calendar year 2021. Monies would also be appropriated for the same purpose in fiscal year 2022 under Senate Bill 67 as amended by the Senate Committee of the Whole. And what I'm wanting to highlight by mentioning that is that what's currently being done under those budget provisions, it's doing something different through a different means. Because under the budget, the Secretary of Wildlife and Parks, they have to issue annual hunting and fishing licenses to all current members of the Kansas National Guard. And the provisions under this bill in front of you would require the secretary to issue lifetime combination hunting, fishing, and fur harvesting licenses to Kansas National Guard veterans. So different categories of licenses for different categories of individuals in the Kansas National Guard. And one other quick thing, you'll notice that there isn't really any sort of express appropriation provision within the bill itself. And that's typical of all these different bills that we've discussed throughout the session. So typically at the very end of the session, there's the omnibus reconciliation bill. And for bills that have passed through both chambers, the budget committees will add in provisions to add funding and appropriations for these new laws. Finally, this bill would take effect upon publication in the statute book. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Hey, Kyle, any questions from the reviser? Okay. Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it may not be for the reviser. That was my hesitation. But do we have a cost figure? I know we don't have a fiscal. Oh, do we have a fiscal? Okay. Okay.
I
All
want to do
right.
that
Thank
next.
you.
So,
Thank you,
okay.
Mr. Chair.
So before we get to other conferees, I do, Victoria Potts, are you still with us?
I am, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So would you, I mean, do we have a fiscal note on this? Do we have the financial information as the bill is presented?
Sure. So there is a fiscal note. The fiscal note says that it would cost the Department of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism about $750,000 in revenue. So there's not increased expenditures, but they would lose $750,000 in revenue because normally those National Guard members would be paying for those licenses, but they would no longer be paying for those. So Wildlife and Parks would lose that money starting in fiscal year 2022.
Do we know what percentage that would be of revenue, or does this, the secretary address that then if you don't have that number?
I can figure out the percentage if you give me a couple of minutes, and if the secretary doesn't answer, I'll answer it in a little bit, if that's okay.
Okay. Other Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is that $750,000 a year, every year, or just the first year?
Ms. Potts.
Sure. So according to the fiscal notes, that'd be $750,000 for fiscal year 2022. And then the fiscal note continues that the potential loss of revenues would be approximately an additional $44,000 as new Guard members or Guard veterans take advantage of the program. So if I'm understanding it correctly, it would be at least $750,000 per year, and then additional as more Guard members take advantage of the free license.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions for Ms. Potts? If Representative Newland.
How many people does that quantify then, Victoria, to come up with $750,000 for 1 year?
Sure. So the fiscal note notes that there's about 492 National Guard members currently taking advantage of the program. And the combination of these three licenses costs about $1,500. So 492 people times $1,500.
And those are members that have been retired for 20, or that have served for 20 years?
Yes, those are the members that would meet the criteria.
The criteria. Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? If you do, she'll be here to answer those questions as we go. So let's move on to proponents now. And our first testifier is Representative Aaron Coleman from District 37. Representative, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I just want to start off by thanking you for your attention. I think this is a really good bill, but I think we can make this bill better by recognizing more veterans for this service. I see some problems with this bill currently. Number one, it says 20 years for these two branches. I wonder, just a scenario, what if somebody was, let's say they were in the National Guard, Air Guard for 19 years, and they did 1 year in the Air Force or active duty. Technically on this bill, I'm worried if they would even be eligible for the program because they did do some time active duty. So one amendment I would like to see is potentially just expand this from 20 years in these two branches to 20 years in any branch and the reserve components. That's one amendment. I would like to see it potentially make this bill better, if that discussion did come up. A second amendment I would like to see, and this is something that is very close to my heart, having a dad who is a disabled veteran. I know a lot of veterans, they would, really going the full 20 years is a privilege. I mean, being in the military, it's really hard on your body, it's hard on your mental health, and a lot of veterans aren't able to do the full 20 years. So a second amendment I would like to see to this bill is potentially allowing disabled veterans of any branch access to this program. And then I will stand for questions at the appropriate time.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Representative Coleman? Have you, to add this many, do you have an idea of what the additional cost might be to the state or to Wildlife and Parks Tourism?
No, I'm not sure of that number.
Okay. Other questions for Representative Coleman? Seeing none, thank you. And if there's other questions, you can be able to stick around for a while?
Yes, thank you, committee.
Very good, thank you. Yes, it should be, would you send out 2 emails, is that right? Okay. Right. There are, Representative Coleman's testimony, which is primarily discussing the amendments he's wanting to propose, and those amendments we still have. So you do have those. Okay, because I can't find the email that has the fiscal note on it. That's why I was asking. So, oh, okay, no problem. Okay, want to also make you aware there is written testimony from Mike Skiles, who was planning on joining us by WebEx, but he could not get off work today to do it. So if you can read his testimony, that he was kind of the one that this original idea began. So we also have, nope, that's for an opponent. So any other proponents for House Bill 2392? Either in the room or online? Seeing none, we will move on now to opponents. And we have Kansas Department of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism Secretary Brad Lovelace. Welcome back to committee, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Chairman Rotches. It's good to see you all again today and members of the committee. House Bill, I am Brad Lovelace, Secretary of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism. House Bill 2392 would provide free lifetime hunting, fishing, and fur harvesting licenses to certain members of the Kansas National Guard, and our department opposes the provisions contained in the bill. While the department strongly supports all currently serving members and veterans of our nation's various military branches, this bill contains no provisions to replace lost funding, as has been discussed previously, that we would incur as a result of providing these free licenses. Currently, the department does have a program, which Kyle outlined, to provide free hunting and fishing licenses as well as park permits to members of the Kansas National Guard. Fees for those licenses and permits are reimbursed by an appropriation of state general funds on a first-come, first-served basis, and this program has been working well. While the department generally supports free issuances to members of the military, the cost of those issuances should be supported by all members of society in the form of appropriated general fund dollars. not borne solely by hunters and anglers, which this bill would cause. All the other people that are buying fishing and hunting licenses would be the ones that would be supporting this. And there's really a double impact. In addition to the numbers that were discussed, the additional impact to us is, if you remember, we use our local dollars to leverage federal dollars. That's an important part of how we function. And that formula is based on the number of licenses we sell. So it's really important in any program that we have that it involve selling licenses, whether the general fund pays for them or private individuals selling licenses, because that number is what allows us to leverage those federal monies, and this would not allow that. So we're kind of hurt twice by the way this bill is structured. The increasing user bases without adequate funding to support those programs is not good public policy, and for that reason, the department opposes this bill. Thank you. That ends my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Representative Smith, I'm sorry, I missed your hand. Do you have a question for the Secretary?
Actually, yeah, I could ask the Secretary if that's all right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So earlier we were talking about how much it would cost the department, and it was mentioned that there are 492 members who are currently taking advantage of this program. I think does that mean 492 buy a license every year? Because we're not talking about a lifetime license for all three of those things. So in that, and I would just ask, that $738,000 that it would cost for 492 members would only be if they were to actually pay for a lifetime license, and it would be a one-time deal, correct?
Right, because those are lifetime licenses. Yeah, the difference between this and the current programs are considerable. The current program is for active duty folks, and we take state general fund money and use that to buy licenses for those individuals until that money runs out each year. This program, in contrast, would be lifetime licenses to those individuals, and then we'd just be adding lifetime licenses each year. And as I mentioned, losing out on those purchases that we couldn't take credit for each year for those lifetime licenses.
Right. I guess, Mr. Secretary, the thing I'm looking at is those individuals, I would say a vast majority of them, just guessing, probably don't buy fur harvester licenses, for instance. Probably you're looking at some who buy a combo hunt and fish maybe, or just one or the other. And so it would be hard to gauge exactly what that loss would be annually. There would obviously be a loss. I just don't know that I'm willing to accept it's going to be $738,000 right off the bat. I think that was a miscalculation.
Yeah, I wish I were better equipped to address your question. I wasn't involved in those details. I'm not sure if Victoria wants to weigh in, but I would certainly be glad to loop back with you on the details of what went into those calculations.
Very good. Thank you. Ms. Potts, did you have anything that could help me on that?
I would just say that the 492 is currently based on the participation rate among active National Guard members. So the department estimated that about 7% of National Guard members and former National Guard members would participate in the program. So that's where the 492 comes from. But you're right, that 7% is based on current National Guard members who buy all kinds of licenses, not just lifetime licenses. So you are correct that it could be a little bit inaccurate to say everybody would buy a lifetime license.
Yeah, and my concern is that it would be, and not to argue with you, I mean to argue with you, but it would seem to be a lot inaccurate to say that they would all then be an immediate drop of $1,500 a piece in the single year. So I want the committee to be aware of that before we make decisions based on how much revenue is lost annually on this. Thank you.
That's a good point. And to Representative Smith's comment, what we see is, as people get older, some people no longer want to participate in those outdoor activities, but other people, never had time before engaged. So it is an estimate, certainly, on the numbers that would want to participate.
All right, very good. Representative Probst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Secretary. The current program for active duty, the way we have that structured, does that allow us to capture those federal dollars based on this sale of licenses, right?
It exactly does, because we use that. We purchase, if you come to us, we purchase a license with that money and give it to you, so we're able to count it, and it works out fine.
So when in this proposal, which moves it to a lifetime hunting license, can you walk me through, is that the hanging point on where we lose the federal dollars?
The fact that there's no SGF mechanism for funding in this bill. If it were, then, and it were run like the one for active duty military, then you all would establish a certain fund, and we would use that till it's exhausted, and then the next year we would apply it again for the new applicants and run it that way.
So for us to retain the federal dollars, which we use for habitat, a lot of this goes for habitat
Absolutely.
restoration that actually augments hunting opportunities in
Amen.
the state. We would need to not give away licenses. We would need to purchase licenses on behalf of people.
Right.
Okay.
Right. But importantly, I'm glad you brought that up. Some would say, well, just use the money you have and use our wildlife fee fund money from hunters and anglers to do it. But the federal law doesn't allow that. That would be playing games with their system. So it has to be outside money, independent money that we use to purchase those licenses. Thank you.
Representative Murphy.
Yes, I think Representative kind of touched on what I had in mind is, would it not be better to just convert what we're doing from active duty to retired and keep doing the same program, basically?
Yeah, that's a great comment. That would be a good solution. We do think these are very deserving people. We just have to be businesslike in the way we approach it, and we think if this is a good idea, then it's a good idea for all of Kansas to support. So I agree.
Thank you.
Representative Minix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I have questions about the federal matching.
Mm-hmm.
Is it based upon the number of licenses sold or the dollars of licenses sold? How's the match work?
Yeah, there's a formula, so it's not real simple, but that is based on actually the size of the state, the number of public acres you have, and well, it's certainly the size of the state bears into the formula, but number of licenses sold is the key component. That's the key one. But then when we want to, so that appropriates money to us. They put money in our category, the Kansas category based on that. But then to leverage that, there's a 2-to-1 or sometimes a 3-to-1 match. So then we have to use the money we built up from those sales to actually leverage that money. But it's a portion based on those number of licenses sold.
If I could follow up, so a lifetime hunt fish license, does that just count as one, or is that multiple
it doesn't.
for every year?
There's another formula for that too, as you would expect. They try to calculate what, based on life expectancy and data that they've got, how many years of hunting licenses that translates into. And so part of it's based on the cost of that. You have to charge enough for those lifetime licenses, but then it's based on a formula. And so they give you credit for multiple years, not just one, but it's not 100 years either. It's a formula based on averages.
So it's actuarial tables.
Amen.
What I'm trying to get to is it possible that we could do something as a reduced price license and the number of total licenses still count towards your federal leverage?
So one of the things we do talk about all the time is we talk about the cost for licenses to hit that right price point for one aspect, just in terms of how we sell those and what demand is. But we also talk about them because that would be a simple way to kind of game the system. Reduce your prices so low that you sold a whole bunch of them. But that's problematic too. The federal government objects to that because other states have tried it. We haven't here in Kansas. So we're trying to play fair with the system, but we need to hire you to help us figure out more ways to do it, because we're trying to be creative and use the system, be fair with it, but use it to our best advantage.
Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems like it would cost, the 750,000 cost, would just be for the first year, and then after that, it would be significantly cheaper because you would have, a lot more participation in that first year, and then after that, the participation would go down significantly. And so, do we have any estimate of what it would be in the future years? Because earlier it was said that it would be, 750,000 plus a little bit more, but that doesn't seem right since these are lifetime licenses and not, just for 1 year. So it seems like, I don't know what the amount would be, but it would be, quite a bit less than 750,000 after this first year.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And Victoria gave us a second number, and I think that was as additional years cost based on recruitment of new people into those ranks of the retired. So I think that's what it was. Victoria, does that make sense to you?
Sure. So the back of the fiscal note, sorry to keep referring to the fiscal note, says it would be $44,910,000 for the out year. And was incorrect earlier that it would be 750,000 plus the 44,000 earlier. So it would the out years would just be 44,910. I was thinking that they would have to renew the license every year, but of course, if you're buying a lifetime license, you don't have to renew it. So 44,910 would be the cost for the out years.
All right, Representative Orr, or Representative Fairchild, was that your questions? Okay, Representative Orr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Secretary. Following up a little bit on what Representative Mannix was saying, would there be some combination there that you could give us of a reduced price that would satisfy your formula you're talking about that involves both the number sold and the dollars received? I mean, this is a really good program, and I think what I'm hearing, and I certainly would like to see some compromise that we could. So could you throw out some ideas there, or we need to come up with those?
No, I mean, we could talk about, a different mix of the cost of that license to try to reduce that. What we'd like to do, if we could, is preserve that value for the sake of the resource.
I understand that, and that's important.
Right. So, but we could have those kind of conversations, about that.
Well, wouldn't it be true that perhaps if we could reduce this cost a little bit, that we might actually encourage some lifetime purchases? Or does that not work that way, in your opinion?
Yeah. As I mentioned before, we've had external folks do studies on what they think that right price point is, and as we look at the cost of those lifetime licenses, it is a huge value, and we consider what our surrounding states charge and things like that when we determine it. Those has been increasing over time with inflation. If we did reduce that, so you're familiar with those price point curves, right, where it crosses that sweet spot, and that's what we try to hit. And as time goes on, we try to adjust that based on that. We know we'd sell more, but ultimately revenue would be less if we reduce that based on our understanding of supply and demand.
Another question, there was a time when I think you sold to retired people at a certain age, and I think that was 65 perhaps, a lifetime, and I don't think you do that anymore. I personally think that hurt. Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, let me see if I...
Okay. That wasn't where I was coming from.
That's okay. If I remember the history, I think we sell a lifetime license, one cost, lifetime license, I think it's only like $40, combination fishing and hunting when you turn 65. But then at 75, you don't need a license anymore anyway, right?
That's the way it is now?
Correct.
Okay, I didn't think you had that in place right now.
Correct. That's my understanding.
Has that hurt you a lot?
It does some, but you try to balance. I mean, public pushed back a lot when they weren't allowed to have that in those older years to have a free license. That was important. And if you go to our lakes, you'll see a lot of the people that come out every day are people that are in that age category because they have
A
the
lot of
time.
older people bringing their grandkids too.
Right, which is great, right. And
And
so,
that's why they do it.
yeah, we're trying to find that right balance. We think the way we have it set up now, we feel like at 65, $40 for a license for the next 10 years is a bargain. And when they turn 75, we do everything we can to encourage them to keep coming out and enjoying the resource, so free is fine with us.
Well, I'd like to work out some kind of compromise on something similar, and I think it has some value. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So should we do based on your age, just every year? Is that what? No, I know where you, well, by the way, you want to buy a boat? But, no. No. Representative Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't mean to be devil's advocate here because, you know, I'm all for the military and people that have served and people that have disabilities. I know, though, from working with Secretary Lovelace that Wildlife Parks and Tourism does a tremendous amount to make sure that there is adequate hunting and fishing areas for disabled veterans, and has specific programs for the disabled veterans and things. But also in working as much with him as I have the past 2 years, I've also learned that those licenses and the monies paid for those licenses are a huge part of their budget, about what they have to pay their people, about the equipment, about the maintenance of roads. Okay, so 48,000 in the years occurring after that first year may not seem like a lot, unless you're in one of those areas that they're trying to maintain or take care of or develop further for better habitat and things like that. So, and I mean, we bought our son at the age of 21 a lifetime hunting and fishing license, gulp, because it paid off. We knew, and he was always going to do it. And it is costly and things, but I just think we have to look at both sides, and I think that Wildlife and Parks would work, you know, with this. But again, as Secretary Lovelace said, it is a business. It's like any other part of government and departments. And if we want it kept well and done well, we have to make sure they have the funding. And if that federal thing would work, that would be great. Because like I said, I'm all for veterans and people that have served the country, but we have to find a way to pay for everything, because money just doesn't come by itself.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate your comments. I might add, and remember, because we're using that, the money we have locally to leverage, it's actually worth more than 44 or 750,000 because of all the extra federal money we get with that. The other, I appreciate you mentioned the disabled areas, because I know you're very familiar with those up around Milford. Those are extra expensive to create access for those folks, but it's a priority for us, and we gladly do that and are looking for opportunities to do more. Thank you.
Anyone online have a question for the Secretary? If not, Representative Haswood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Was there a specific reason why it was the Kansas Air and Army National Guard? Do you happen to know?
I am not sure.
Okay.
I think, I don't know if Mr. Skiles that was where he served. I don't know.
I believe in his testimony he did say that he served from the National Army
right.
Guard. I was just curious. And then if I have another question, if I may. For the Secretary, full disclosure, I'm Native American. I have my lifetime hunting, fishing license as well. In those certain circumstances, I know we're probably a smaller population, but with those programs in place, how is the financial burden covered?
It's spread out among the other users. It's that same formula, and so there are groups that we work extra hard to include, and we are not having any regrets about those licenses that we give out, because you're an important group and we're glad to include you. But all the users bear the cost of that, so it's shared.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Representative Featherston?
Thank you, sir. Do you have a feeling for what age retired National Guard is? Like my husband's family is Army, and they're retiring at 20 years, 44, well, younger than that. He joined when he was 18, 20 years later. So his lifetime license would have been the $500 license. Do you have any feel for what kind of lifetime license you'll be awarding?
Right. It's a one-size-fits-all. So to your point, when members or participants are retiring that early, then they get a huge benefit, and so that's a loss, and that's part of the formula that we try to use to make our best estimate. What is that average age? So there's a lot of years. If you're a 44-year-old going to use it, for the rest of your life, that's a lot of missed revenue for us. So that's just part of the calculus on this.
Okay, and I guess I will add, I'm for military benefits. My uncle was National Guard for way past his 20 years. I'm just curious. It's just a lot of money to think about.
Amen. Yeah, thank you. We are trying to run like a business, so doing our best.
Representative Fairchild?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering if you know what the total amount of revenue that you received from fishing and hunting licenses is for your agency, and then, like what percentage reduction do you think this would be overall?
Yeah, I should know that. I don't know, Victoria, if you have that in front of you right now. I should have that at my fingertips, but I don't know it. Go ahead if you know it.
I do. So all of the fees from licenses goes into the Wildlife Fee Fund, and it's about $33 million a year between hunting and fishing licenses as well as big game permits. So the $750,000 would be about 4.5% of the 16.5 million that comes from hunting and fishing licenses. So again, that's about 4.5% for fiscal year 2022 of a loss that, compared to the total amount that they're estimating in revenue for fiscal year 2022.
Mr. Secretary, if there's a one sheet or something, Timmy, to explain some of these, we've thrown a lot of figures around. Yeah. And so if there's a way, like what you, we went through your budget and appropriations, but I think some of these numbers might help us as we're looking at moving forward and because it looks like this is going to be a little more, this isn't one of those simple bills, it looks like. So, okay.
We have budget sheets we're glad to share.
Yes. I think if you could get those to Terry, then Terry could distribute them to the members. So, Representative Jacobs.
That was going to be my request. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Probst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Representative Hasswood touched on an issue that I want to explore a little bit. This is not a one and done situation, right? We anticipate there will be, we have a large number of people who will take advantage of it the first year it's available. Then we'll have a certain number of people forever that will continue to fall on those roles. So over time, you're seeing a continuous, although small year to year reduction in your budget, but because you're a fee-funded agency, that's going to create some upward pressure, as you indicated, on everyone else to raise fees everywhere else. Because as Representative Carlson pointed out, you guys do a lot of work with pretty limited budgets. But can you walk through that a little bit about that, kind of how that creates that upward pressure on licenses and fees?
Sure. Yeah. So like any family, we have a budget we have to live within our means. That changes each year based on the number of licenses that we sell. So our customers have expectations as far as resources, access, all those kind of things, and the programs that we deliver. And we are glad to do that, but we're always pinching our pennies. That's just the way we do work. And I am really proud of the agency because these folks are wizards at getting the most mileage out of that money. And so as we look at increasing the users and decreasing the funding, right, we get to a hard spot and we have to figure out where we cut. And it could be over time, it could be positions that are partially funded using these monies, but it will definitely be programs will be part of that. And so we'll just see a crunch over time. And we're at a time, this has come up in a couple of committees where, in fact, I was talking with Representative Murphy just yesterday about the fact that there's less and less land available for people to use. And so it puts at a premium the public lands that we have to offer. And so we're trying to expand that in bits and pieces strategically as we can. But the word we get from residents is they're discouraged about buying licenses because they can't hunt those places they always used to. And so the public resources that we offer are more important than ever. And so this will compromise our ability to purchase and maintain those the way we like to. So it's kind of going in the wrong direction that way.
You know, the example that came to mind as you were answering is a fisheries biologist. I don't know if you know this or not. I wrote the most comprehensive book on fishing in Kansas.
I've read your book.
But even during the time working on that, I think when we started working on that book, there was a fisheries biologist dedicated to just about every reservoir in the state.
Right.
And then over time, they sort of consolidated into districts.
Right.
And the feeling among anglers who enjoyed a very personal relationship with fisheries biologists weren't so happy when their biologist was split up over 3 or 4 lakes.
Right. You're right. Just like most businesses, we're trying to get more efficient with time. I will point out, despite the fact that we have fewer biologists than in the past, this year in terms of fishing in Kansas is going to be exemplary. We have great opportunities out there with the floods we had before. So, but that just means our biologists are busier than ever. But there are good things ahead, but it does put a squeeze on us. You're right. You're right.
Representative Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And another thing, I mean, with this last year, and maybe the year before that, the weather plays such a part in your budget. Right. And nobody can predict the weather. I mean, we don't know, but with the floods and things, the lowland bridges and things like that, I mean, they were plugged with the stumps and things, and just the maintenance that it took and the cost and the money just has to be there. Or whether you're a veteran or no matter who you are, you can't access the places to hunt or to fish or to trap or whatever. And I think that's just another thing. It's such a round thing, and that weather we can't predict from year to year, and the money just has to be there. Even for people that live on those roads, they have to be able to get to and from home, and the farmers have to get to and from their fields. And so that I just saw so much of the maintenance and the cost of that last year that, yeah, I felt bad.
Right. That's a good point. Back in 2019, you're aware, because it hit us hard at Milford, some of the ground that we manage is that bottom ground, and it's good ag ground on a regular year. 2019, we lost almost $2 million worth of revenue off of that ground because we work with local farmers, your constituents, who farm that. We get a share of that, which works out great. We use that money, but when you lose that money on a wet year, we lost a lot of money, and we're still recovering from that.
Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Brad, I appreciate you being here and being so well prepared. And I should know, but I don't. Did you take a 5% cut in your budget this year? Because I'm on that committee and I should know, but I didn't look at that.
Yeah, we did not, because when the governor
you're
asked for all the agencies, because we're fee funded, we weren't in the same category. So, so we didn't take that same cut.
Well, this would amount to almost a 5% cut.
Right,
And
right.
that's why it just hit me. And I thought, I can't remember whether we did that or not. And I do also remember, as Representative Carlson was talking about the support you give to people with disabilities. And when I first was elected, about 2003, the city of Manhattan had gone through a lot of ADA compliance issues, and the state was dealing with that as well. And I remember taking your people at the lakes out to show them why the handicapped people couldn't fish there. And I know that they were very responsive, and they came back with repairs and changes in the docks and whatever to allow for that. But it just also occurred to me that we don't know what kind of mandates you're going to get next year. And that was a good change in our life for people to make our state, our world accessible for those with disabilities, but it's expensive. And so the next thing that comes along, you're going to have to do it, whether you have your normal amount of fees or not. And I, you know, we've had a lot of, we already do a lot for our military, but I don't know if there's a lot of, do you have anything to do with their boating license and their car license and all the things that we do?
Yeah.
You wouldn't car, but do you have anything to do with the boating?
I don't think we have a break, not that I'm aware of.
Do you get
for
fees off of boating?
We do. When they register their boats, when anybody does, when Representative Rogers registers a new boat, we'll get that money. And we don't give any breaks. Part of that also is, again, that leverages federal money from the Coast Guard in that case. And so the different funds have different requirements as far as what you can do and who you can give those to and that kind of thing.
And I have no idea what it amounts to for any department, but didn't we do a constitutional amendment about boating licensure or something 10 years ago or so? So, you know, the public brings forth ideas. We pass laws and amendments and changes, and you deal with them. And I am really glad to get a breakdown of what the cost would be to do this, because while we want to do things for people, it's only going to increase the cost for everybody else to do this, or else we won't have any services from your department. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Brad.
Shut the mic off. Any other questions? Anybody online? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you. And we'll plan to deliver those budget sheets yet today to you.
Okay. And then Terry will get them out to everybody. And in case if my wife or family members are listening, I have not bought a boat. Yeah, well, yeah. Okay. Also, we have another opponent. It is written only, and you will receive it shortly, probably tomorrow. It was in the file. It came early, and it was misplaced, so I apologize. So it's from Lauren Sill. So as an opponent, so you will have that for you, so watch your email. Other opponents for House Bill 2392? Seeing and hearing none. Any neutral on 2392? I don't see any. I don't hear any. Any other questions? Since we have Ms. Potts here as well. I know we had a lot of questions. Good discussion today. I see no hands, so we will close the hearing on House Bill 2392. Okay, again, a reminder, no meeting tomorrow or Friday, and our next meeting will be Monday. We'll have two bill hearings, and then on Tuesday, we will take action on all the bills heard this week and next Monday. Anything else for the committee? Representative Newland, do we have rural caucus tomorrow for those that are involved in that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do. Kansas Farm Bureau will be presenting an update on their health care plans.
Okay. And
lunches will be on first floor, north wing.
Okay. So if you got to email, remember that. So with that, we are adjourned.